about, oh, well, you mentioned that it's going to come down a lot to what you like. So let's start there. What do you like? What kind of what attracts you to a project? What gets you to say, if not yes, maybe I'll at least read a partial on this?
Well, I like to think that like I have a general very wide taste, but also very particular stylistic things that always grab me. And I think that is when you are a newer editor is something you have to build. And you don't build that until you read hundreds and hundreds of submissions and hundreds of already published books, and then realize like you got to really think to yourself, why do I like this? Can I break it down in a very explainable way? And can I recognize it in its really rough form if I see it in a submission? And that's actually a very, it's not an easy skill to hone unless you're very particular about it. I think one of the things I actually tell, people who want to go into editorial to do, aside from reading a lot, is to blog about books, is to review books, because through the process of reviewing, you're able to like really be honest with yourself about why you like something, why you didn't like something. And once you're on that level, you can break it down more and talk about what would you change about a manuscript? What do you think would make it better? And all those elements are the layers that add to what editorial taste becomes. So when I'm thinking about for myself, for genre, I definitely know I'm a super big idea person. I really like high concept premises, but it has to be something that can also be explainable in 30 seconds or less. Because I come from a sales background, so you can, for example, 2 weeks ago, I had one of my books published called The Soul Majestic by Ferret Steinmetz. It's an adult science fiction, and the pitch is it's a restaurant in space for fans of Becky Chambers and The Good Place, about a teenager who's supposed to be a philosopher, but he can't because he's anxious and he's also gay. But when he wins a free dinner at the best restaurant in the galaxy, his whole life changes.
Well, there you go. I mean, that's pretty succinct right there.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a skill set that you build up over time. But that's exactly the type of story that I would instantly jump at. It's distinctive. It's kind of quirky. It kind of hints at like a deep dive into something. In this one, it's as you could probably suspect, it's like 5-star cuisine. And half the book talks about how to cook other fancy food. And it's very absorbing and it's beautifully written. But it's also a science fiction story. And it has this whole undercurrent of sociopolitical critique about class and the meaning of labor and taking down the 1%. But it's all told in a very fluffy, lighthearted manner that really punches you in the gut at the very end. And so that's like the other element that I'm really intrigued by with submissions. Like if it has some sort of, a socio-political question that it poses, if it talks about how society and technology relate to each other, how people relate to science, how, a certain fantasy element, like magic could, influence something like gender roles. All those elements as well really attract me to a manuscript. I think that's like the nutshell version of what my taste is, aside from actually doing a deep dive into like every single subgenre that I acquire for and what I like and don't like about it.
Oh, I have no doubt there are listeners who would love it if we did nothing else. Well, let me ask you this then. If you've got a book that has that high concept going in, sounds amazing, like, oh my God, we've got Banneker Bones, we've got some giant robot bees, this sounds like it's going to be a winner. What is it that would turn you off? What usually calls the whole thing off as you're reading? And
Yeah, like for me, there has to be an element of voice. At what stops me in a lot of manuscripts actually is that I'm reading it and it might be a really interesting premise, or it might have, a very like entertaining set of characters, or it might be a genre that I absolutely love usually, but the writing's flat. Like, and that's a really hard thing to explain, like what a writer's voice is. But if it's kind of like, I guess the best comparison is that when you watch a television show and there's certain directorial choices are being made on screen, or like something about, the lighting or the color, palette they choose, or what kind of characters are on screen and why they're there and what they're doing, all those like elements, you see, visually, I would want to be able to also see visually in my head when I'm reading a manuscript. And if that, cinematic confidence is not in the writing, I just can't latch onto it. And I think that's more than anything else why I reject a manuscript, is that when I feel like the voice is not making it, or I get bored. As soon as like I stop reading and I can't pick it up again because I have no motivation to, then like, all right, it's an automatic pass.
Well, sure, yeah. If you're not motivated to read it, it's hard to imagine how the readers you would position it to would want to continue reading it. So that makes sense.